Our guest today is Piotr Bombol, and he is an economist turned marketing pro turned AI entrepreneur. And he's building a tool called Aily, which is an AI powered marketing research tool. And the reason that I'm excited to talk to Piotr is because I believe that as AI advances and we see more automation, I think that adjacent professions such as design and marketing will increasingly overlap. And obviously, even as a creative professional or a creative agency, marketing is such a important part of your business. So it'd be really interesting to hear your voice, your opinion about how AI is making inroads in the marketing industry as well.
Yeah, pleased to meet you, and thanks for the invitation. And hi everyone who's joining this podcast episode. Yes, so thanks for this. Let's say not only invitation but also description of how I came here. So I can confirm that I've been working on my own AI tool for the last over a year. And over this whole journey, I've been able to understand different point of views, test different hypotheses, and on daily basis I talk with people from the creative industry and how they approach AI, how what I do may help them, but also what they fear, what they expect, what they're excited about. Because I think for designers especially, but broadly for creative industries, AI is a very emotional theme, and I totally get that. Like it can bring all of the all type of emotions, and I think it's really worth talking about everything that's good and bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's certainly true. It's divisive in the design industry to say the least. But before we get into that, why don't we talk a little bit about you, your background, and it'd be interesting to hear about the reason you're building A Daily and why it exists.
Yeah, sure. So I have been working for 10 years as a strategist, advertising strategist. I started at network agencies, then I joined Deloitte Digital, but I also had been running my own agency for 6 years. And we were able to score a lot of awards, including international ones. We worked on fantastic campaigns, and after this whole 10 years, I got this feeling that maybe this is time for trying something new. So what I wanted to do is to switch from service side to product side. So I wanted to build something, and I was just quite fortunate that I made this decision early last year, where the whole AI craze began. So we got access to all these new shiny tools that enabled us to try different things, test hypotheses, and see what works, what doesn't work. At the time, at the beginning of last year, I also talked with a lot of people from my network to understand like what are the struggles they face. And out of all of these discussions and taking into consideration my point of view and my experience, I decided to create a tool that would solve some of the major problems for people in the industry, and which ChatGPT doesn't solve, and other tools neither. So Aily is just a tool that enables you to tap into a vast database of marketing data, specifically case studies of campaigns that were winning different awards, were recognized by the industry. And this database is a reliable source of information for your, let's say, conceptual work. So whenever you want to get inspired working with a new client, or you're stuck in your process and you want to see some of the examples of how the category communicates, or the other brands similar to yours, or maybe you're looking for something very specific, like, okay, so we should do TikTok, so how do brands leverage TikTok. So I wanted to have a tool that would answer all of these needs. And what we created is an AI tool that runs on a curated database of 2,500 campaigns from the last 8 years from all around the world. and you can use it for free. We enabled the browsing of all of everything we have in the app for free. It's also because we wanted to democratize this information that is scattered around the internet. It also make it a little bit more accessible because, as you probably guess, most of the knowledge there is in English. So our apps runs natively in 13 languages. So if you have friends in your city in Mexico, you can show them the app and it runs in Spanish. So like they can benefit from it probably better. Like, it's probably they feel much more comfortable using Spanish than English. So this is also what we wanted to achieve.
Cool. So how do how are you implementing AI within the app, other than obviously the translation that you've mentioned?
Yeah. So it's a good spot that these translations wouldn't be possible without AI. Like for us, it was really surprising that when we started to test the translation of the app, because we started with just two languages, Polish and English, and like with English being always the first language of the app. And then we started to add other languages. I happen to know Spanish and French as well. So for me, it was quite easy to verify if these translations are good. And I did everything in ChatGPT. So, it's a quite conversational approach. So I could, just talk with the chat and see if it can improve the translations. But then we moved to other languages like Vietnamese, where I don't know what's there. It's not a language I know, but we made a decision to first add these languages as a support, and then later ask people what they think about it. And it worked, and it has been working until now. So we just don't care, and we don't ask people before adding a language if it's correct, because it's almost always correct. So I think it's really interesting, like, revelation that you have using AI tools for translation. I would never come back to using Google Translate right now. For me, it's just impossible. And as for the other tools, like for the other ways we use AI, so in fact, we collect a lot of information for our app in a quite a traditional way. It will change soon because we figured out a way to analyze the ads, any type of ads, be it print ads, outdoor ads, TV commercials with AI. And I think this may be interesting for your audience because our aim is to add around 30,000 print campaigns from the last years to our app that you will be able to explore based on almost anything. So like what was the challenge, the target group, the message, the benefits, and so on. But currently we use AI mostly to understand user questions or inquiries, because our app works similar to Perplexity, or if you don't know Perplexity, similar to any tool where you input something and you expect an answer. So in our case, you can input anything, any sentence, question or not question, and you will get a list of campaigns that match this query. And AI is understand what user means, but also we use AI to structurize all the information in our database. So, for example, all of the campaigns, we have a specific structure of information that we show to the user. So like that, for each campaign there's a target group, the challenge, the idea, and the results. And regardless of how the information was provided in the first place from like the source, we structurize it and then we translate it to 13 languages, so our users can easily understand like these key elements of each campaign that we show. Because sometimes you may find some descriptions of campaigns, you are just googling, and some of them are very very long and it's difficult to understand like what's the meaning. On the other hand, they may be very lacking, and then you don't really know what to do with it. So we wanted to like structurize it and have it like sorted out for our users.
Okay, that's cool. And I imagine, like, I saw an app the other day, I think it's called Hume or something, and it does voice analysis. So it records your voice and then it can assess like if the person's angry or they're sad or things like that. And just like thinking about that idea, but using it within your app. Like, for example, I guess you could use AI to like analyze the sentiment of the ad. Like maybe I want to create like an emotional campaign that has like a sad point, and I could use AI to search your database for other themes that had like a sad
Yeah.
or emotional theme.
Yes, so even now you can do this because what we employ right now is a context-based search. So you can look for campaigns that, as you mentioned, may be expressing specific emotions, maybe around specific theme. What we want to add in the future is this automated analysis with AI. And what you mentioned with understanding like the intent or the emotions behind the voice, or like this information hidden in voice recordings. I think this is an example of how AI can be used to understand things that are around us. So like we started with just understanding text, and ChatGPT like works on a text. So you write something and it tries to understand it and tries to answer, or you paste a whole document and it tries to understand like what's there. And as for the other types of materials, AI is also capable of doing that. So what we also do is, first of all, analysis of images, and AI is really good at it. I mean, what we do right now is we analyze, for example, print ads, and there are models where you where you can put even the most bizarre and very specific print ad, and AI figures out elements of this and tries to understand what's the meaning behind this. Because in the end, for AI, this is chunks of data that can be broken down. Like the image is just a set of zeros and ones, just like text. It doesn't really matter for AI. And I think this is great because we have access to all of this. And previously people were using such tools to maybe make the content more accessible. So you would have an image that you would analyze, or you would add a description for people who have troubles seeing, right? So they can access this type of information. Right now it can be used for almost everything. So you can just, as in our case, you can analyze a print ad or a design or a key visual and ask AI what's there and what could be the meaning, and it just gives you some additional information that you can use in your work. And I think this is fantastic because it can help, specifically, especially it can help people who are juniors, who may not have this experience and fluency. And if you take an ad expert and show them any type of ad, this person will understand what the meaning. But for people who are just starting or may not have that much experience, they may struggle. So I think AI is great, and also AI can analyze videos, AI can analyze audio, but as you also pointed out, it can also try to understand, maybe the emotions in voice. It can, this is the most interesting and a very new approach, and I think this is going to give us even more information about the content that we observe as humans, but everything will be enriched with all this information that AI can dig up out of this content.
Cool. So, I mean, an obvious one, and I don't know if this is in your plans or it's an ability that's on the website at the moment, but once you have this database of high quality ads and stuff, it would be maybe the next step is to have AI help you create new ads. influenced by the database that you have?
Yeah, so like even right now there's a part of our app that is more of a assistant, which is a more traditional chatbot interface, and it doesn't serve that exact purpose as you mentioned, but we try to give our users additional help for kickstarting the process, for like brainstorming. And even though it doesn't run on the whole database because it would be very difficult to implement, we took a different route, and I think it's quite a similar because in the first case about browsing the ads, you can find anything across these 2,500 campaigns, and these are only curated campaigns. For this, let's say, creative assistant, we took so-called deck of brilliance. It's a collection of 52 creative tools, universal ones. This was made by ad veterans, and this deck is something that can be used to solve any type of marketing problem. It's like, dramatize the problem, challenge the consumer, um, adopt a different category style, and it just a lot of universal rules or tricks you can use. And what we do is we have an assistant that runs on this information, and it leverages it to try to give you a guidance in how you can approach it. You can try to write ads in it. I remember one of our users came back to me and saying that he created a TV commercial idea for a corn seed brand targeted at Kazakhstan farmers. So, like, something really specific, but I was happy that we were able to help him. Like, we created something that helped him a little bit. But obviously, like, whenever you use AI to create any type of idea or concept, you should be aware that, like, you should have your expectations set at specific level. Like, I wouldn't expect it to be phenomenal or outstanding. It's probably going to be cool, interesting, but nothing very spectacular.
Yeah. And I think a way that creatives can use your app is like there's, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but the for the audience, the way to improve results from AI is to give it a framework like you've described that you do. So AI is great at following frameworks, and another way to really improve the output is to give it examples, really good examples of what you want. So if you give it a framework and then you go on your app, for example, and you were to find three amazing ads that were specific to your needs, and then prompt it to, not copy these but use them as inspiration, and it's very good at pulling out patterns. And I think that's one way creatives could benefit from this.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like what we have right now with what we've been building is a huge database of information that can be used as insights. Right now, I'm also working on let's say analysis of ads that we have collected from the last year Cannes Lion, so like the most prestigious creative awards. And I was just trying to uncover specific patterns about the winning campaigns. So, like, what type of campaigns win and what do they include? Which means, like, what's most important for juries. And for a lot of people working in advertising, winning a Cannes Lion is the most important thing they do, and I get it. It's prestigious. These are prestigious awards, and yeah, I think as you mentioned, you just can uncover, like, you can browse all of this information. You can take it and you can use it as a pattern or as a reference for AI to work further. And yeah, this is exactly what we want to do. So we want to automate this as well, so our users will be able to just ask, like, exactly, like, what are the things that make this work or doesn't work, what are the trends, what are you know something on a much more structured level, but also on a more of an in-depth analysis than just browsing the content.
Yeah, that made me think of Consensus. Have you heard of Consensus app?
Yeah, so like Consensus is one of the apps that was an inspiration for us. If you look closely, there are elements that was a huge inspiration, and I admit it because I think they figured out a lot of things, and I think they are good examples. I also admit to getting inspirations from Perplexity and other tools for this similar, let's say, area. But what's the best thing you like about Consensus?
I like that. Well, this is it, isn't it? It's like people doing. If someone doesn't know the app, Consensus is basically a lot of scientific papers that are collected in a database, and then if you have a question like, for example, like what's the healthiest way to eat or something, it will search these papers and then it will give like scientific references, and it's about getting to some truth, isn't it, really?
Mhm.
Like, there's a lot of information out there, there's a lot of noise, so it's about AI sorting through all this noise and hopefully finding some insights for you, which again is similarity with your app, I believe, like picking the best and then
Yeah.
seeing what works.
Yeah, in a way it is, exactly. So I think like the huge advantage of AI is that it can go through lots of data, which is just impossible for people. So as you mentioned with consensus, like looking for answer for this specific question that you mentioned, it would be just impossible for a person to go through everything and try to figure it out, like what's the answer based on the all the scientific studies and so on. And AI can handle this, but obviously AI can make errors, which is maybe not so, like, people may not understand it, but AI, these large language models, which power most of the AI apps, they can make mistakes, they can make up stuff, and so on. So it's very difficult if you're building an app like ours to present the biggest value to the user, meaning that these answers or information will be precise, reliable, real life, and so on. It was really difficult for us to solve this problem. I think we've solved it. So we can only provide with information that is real, and you can double check everything, but it's still going to be only the real information. So yeah, like a lot of people try AI tools. They don't may not even know that these are AI tools or AI enhanced tools, and they get some information, and this information afterwards appear to be false. Right? It has some very negative effects when these are chatbots employed by companies. So like there were some situations where like a chatbot used by one airline would mislead the consumers, and it led to a lot of problems because like this is business, and you can, like, your bot may mislead your consumers, and it gets completely out of control, and even though you didn't program it just happens. Yeah, so you need to be very careful with everything.
Yeah, I had a funny story about one airline. Well, it's not funny for them, but the airline had agreed to sell like a flight for like $1 or something, and
Yeah,
you know
and they had to go with it because like they made this chatbot like representative of a company. So it was probably much better just sell this for this price than face consequences of of cheating the consumer.
yeah, I mean AI is amazing, but obviously we're still very early and it has a lot of flaws. I mean, we touched on it earlier a little bit. AI is quite controversial in the
Yes,
design
yes.
industry. A lot of that's about the data that it's trained on, and it's in some ways, although not really, directly challenging. It seems to output images And if you don't really understand design, that's what designers do. They output images. I was wondering, is because you're in an adjacent
Mhm.
sector
Yes.
like marketing, is AI controversial at all in marketing? Are people worried about it?
Yeah. So as you imagine, an important part of marketing is design. So all the communication that is produced in marketing, all the materials are made out of text and images, and this image side is probably the more convincing one. So like a lot of people just need to see something, not just read something. So like the visual part of marketing is very important. And I think this area, we have seen the the biggest change in AI in the area of design, because we went from very goofy pictures like 2 years, 1 year and a half ago, and eight fingers and so on, towards, I think, right now having AI tools capable of creating photorealistic people, right? So it really moves quickly, and I think like the speed of change is something that's also making people nervous, because people never like changes to happen overnight and quickly. People just want to have time to adapt to new environment. And I think with generative AI and generative AI for images, it's happening very quickly, and it's difficult to find something to have fun about, because in a moment it may change, right? So I think for marketing there could be two different point of views. So first is a client side point of view. So clients just run businesses, and they just need to optimize everything. So from their perspective, they need to do marketing to sell things, and they most quite often they perceive all the communication, all the creative and so on as a cost. And if they can cut costs, then they are very happy to do so. I mean, obviously there are a lot of clients who understand the value of good creative and how creativity sells, and how you should invest in this area, and how there are other less tangible meanings of creativity and advertising, and how it can be used to build relationship with consumers. But a lot of clients just perceive marketing as additional costs. So when they realize that they can cut costs on producing the materials, especially design, because if you wanted to create a lot of, let's say, creative materials, so like you run a huge paid marketing campaign with different formats, then most of the times you pay for designer, right? Because this is something that you need to do. Like you need all these different formats and variations and so on. And right now there are tools already that handles that, so clients can cut costs on that, and they are really happy to do so. So like their perspective is very pragmatic and down to earth. But on the other hand, there's advertising, let's say, point of view, so agencies, freelancers, creators. And I think they sympathize with this notion that you mentioned, that AI can be controversial, is controversial for them, that AI is being trained on data that was like the artist didn't give allowance to do so, and it can be, it can copy what it analyzed earlier, and it's essentially a theft. I mean, I hear all of these things, and it's definitely divisive on the agency side. But also, like, in agencies there are a lot of very progressive people who want to test all the new technology every time, and they are very early adopters. So I think there's a huge part of advertising people who are designers, who are art directors, who jump on this hype train, and they try different tools, and they try to create new things, completely new things, because this is what AI gives them as the ability. While obviously there's others who are completely opposed. And I think that this division will stay. Well, it will stay for some time, and there will always be people who reject changes. There will always be people who are really happy, like to try different things, new things. But obviously, in the marketing industry as a whole, there are some other concerns which are very important. So, for example, you mentioned that for a lot of designers, AI models are trained on data that is, copyrighted, and this has repercussions on how it can be used in commercially. So some clients are afraid that if they buy or if they use images created by Midjourney, DALI, or Stability, Stable Diffusion, and so on, they may get into troubles, because if someone then comes as an original artist and sues them and so on, it can get very complicated. And I think this is a valid point, because it's right now it's uncertain what will happen. OpenAI announced that they will take they will cover all the costs of such legal procedures, but even though someone says it will cover the cost, doesn't mean it's not going to happen, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's still a probability. And also, there's one additional thing that is very tricky, is that if you generate image and then try to sell it, it's not obvious, because you don't own this, right? If you just generate it with a prompt, you don't own this. So companies want to buy, let's say, property from agency to use it in a way they want, and they cannot do this. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of workarounds, and there's a lot of things are happening. I even recently talked with a guy from Mexico City, John Davy, who runs agency in Mexico City, and they did a great project for Dolce Gusto, where they generated, together with client, they generated 1,200 images with, like, the frappe being the central piece, but then they added some elements that the users mentioned as something they add to their own frappe. So, like, creating all the different images for the people, and they did it over a span of 24 hours. So, there's probably no design team that would handle this. I mean, this wouldn't work without Midjourney. And in the end, was it like worth it? I think it was very interesting. I saw the results. I think really resonated with people, and clients was happy to do so. So, there are good examples, but I think we always need to remember about the potential threats.
Yeah. I mean, you're in Poland, so I guess you're probably aware of the EU laws that they're trying to bring in,
Yeah,
and they're the first clarity that any country in the world's like brought in. Obviously, we've every country had copyright laws, but it's this: if I take your data and then I use it to train another model, it's this grey area.
yeah,
But the EU's clarifying that, and actually the take that they've, it seems quite harsh. So they're asking people to, if you train a model, you have to declare all the data and you have to get permission. So already, like every large AI model out there, OpenAI, Google, Amazon, whoever, like in the next, 2 years as these laws roll out, they're either going to have to, magic up this information. There's no way they can get like people to approve copyright. Like, so these models are going to be essentially as they exist today. In the next 2 years, they'll be illegal in the EU, and it's interesting to see how the rest of the world will follow.
yeah. I mean, always there will be always some local, regional regulations that takes priority over everything else. And living in EU gives you some additional regulations. And even recently, we've had a very interesting outcome of one of the restrictions made by European Union. When you Google something and you Google a place, so you're looking for, like, something specific, restaurant or anything like a shop, you cannot find information on first results in Google redirecting you to Google Maps. That's because you said that Google cannot use the monopoly of, like, having the search engine to sell services of Google Maps as an additional product, which, from user perspective doesn't make sense. This is how you perceive this. So I think we may come to quite similar outcomes here with AI. From what I understood and from what I read, I'm not a lawyer, so I may not get all the meaning. These are not as harsh as some people may imagine. I think it gives some really needed clarification on, labeling content that is generated by AI, not using AI to make fakes or use people personal data for, without allowance and so on. So I think there are some areas which definitely needs to be stopped or regulated. A lot of areas are going to be fine, and I think, like, marketing is one of those examples because it doesn't present that much harm in terms of, like, personal data and so on. But as for the training of the AI models, I think that, these huge enterprises that have their own models, I don't think they will care at all, because this is the struggle that we see all the time. So EU can try to regulate Facebook, Meta, but Meta then says, okay, so we'll block everyone in the EU, right? So, this is a choice to be made, and obviously, I don't expect a European Union or countries to try to ban, OpenAI, Microsoft, Google models, because that may mean that people at this country lose access to this, and this can be a huge can have huge domino effect, because, for example, if you ban AI, that may mean that Microsoft Copilot is not going to work with your country. And this is serious, because if it gets adopted, and everybody will use it and get used to it, right? Italy was one of the countries that tried to ban ChatGPT, but they reversed the decision because people were angry, and they just started using VPN. And this is not something that you want to have as an effect, because, like, obviously countries try to um, protect their civilians, but in some cases it just wouldn't have any effect.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some regulation and definitely a lot of clarity needed. But like you say, then it becomes a power struggle. So they regulate it, and then they're like, "Oh well, we'll pull the plug on
Yeah,
Europe. You won't be able to
yeah.
use our model." And then it's like, well, if everyone else has this like tool that they're using to get productivity, are we falling behind? So, I mean,
As with the training, I think that one important thing to understand is that everything has already happened, and it's just not going. I mean, we cannot revert this process. We cannot untrain the model. The models can be only trained. It is only a one way ticket. So you cannot untrain Midjourney. You cannot untrain ChatGPT. It's already trained. So the problem won't disappear. It will always be there. And what I have, I have a feeling that it will just stay this way. So everybody will know that there was copyrighted data used for training, and everybody will just go with it eventually.
yeah, I mean, yeah. There's another way you can look at it is that one of the things within the law was that the EU said if you don't comply with these, you can still use the model, but you'll have to pay us a fee, a fine for
Yeah,
breaking these laws,
yeah.
which is like 7% of global turnover or something. So you could look at it a different way and just say they probably know it's going to continue. They've just taxed it.
Yeah,
So
yeah. You can take this into consideration, and there's obviously, as you mentioned, sometimes businesses can look this as an additional tax, and they are willing to pay this, and they still earn money. So I'm just trying to be really realistic here. Even though I'm building, an AI tool, and I try to get users, and I try to bring it to everyone in the industry. I also share all of these concerns, and I also try to understand all of the advantages, disadvantages. Obviously, in our case, we use OpenAI because we needed to run everything in our app. But in our case, we don't train our models, we don't use data for training, we aggregate it, and we also always credit the creators. So I think this may be more comfortable for the creators, because we always recommend them as someone who made this. So if you're a client and you wanted to know who made this, then we'll be happy to redirect you. So this is a different approach. So this is why sometimes I don't even consider our tool as an AI tool, because most AI tools are associated with running on copyrighted data, taking your inputs as a new training data. So there can be a lot of things that users are not happy about at all.
Yeah, definitely. So I thought it'd be interesting to, as like you're an AI expert, you're building with these tools. So I thought outside of that, it'd be interesting to hear about the ways that you use AI to, improve your productivity. Like, how are you using it on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so first of all, I mentioned that I have always been a strategist. So I can analyze things, I can write something, but I'm not a copywriter, and also I'm not a designer at all. And my problem with generating images with AI is that I have not enough skills and, let's say, creative expertise to make something looking good. So AI, it is a proof that AI just cannot generate very good images right away for us. It requires a lot of experience and effort and testing. So you need to be a designer to make the most of it. I just cannot. So I just, I decided not to try. And there are definitely people who are much better experts of Mid Journey or Stable Diffusion and so on. I know it mostly from the theoretic side and having some fun, but not having great results. What I do with AI is that I use ChatGPT on daily basis, and as we all know, ChatGPT is it can be a very general app for everything, but I'm just finding some specific tasks that I want ChatGPT to help me with. As an example, I try to publish regularly on LinkedIn, and my let's say my process is that first I try to write it myself, but with help of Hemingway editor. Hemingway is an AI tool, but most of the time it just gives you tips on how to make your writing more understandable, and it's more about suggesting, not writing for you. Then I put it into ChatGPT to and ask for a review. So I want to see maybe what I missed, what is maybe not clear, or too detailed or not detailed enough. And then I try to correct everything myself. And then with this iterative process, I try to give it new drafts to ChatGPT to have it reviewed, and maybe some grammar corrections. But I'm not always happy with the outcome. But this is how I approach publishing copyrighted content with AI tools. But I use I use ChatGPT for a lot of things, and I always try to find a specific task for ChatGPT, and then I try to put the ChatGPT in a specific role, specific context, and let it focus only on this. So, for example, I may do some interviews with my users, and then I want to analyze them. So maybe I would ask ChatGPT to act as a user experience researcher with a lot of experience, and help me maybe structurize this information, or try to dig up some insights. Then I can ask it to be an expert in the field of strategy and evaluate some tools that I find interesting, and I want to see like how they can be, simplified and so on. So it's like always about figuring out a specific task that mostly revolve around analysis, looking for insights, looking for specific answers, for summarizing, for synthesizing. But every time I try to describe how I want ChatGPT to behave and what type of point of view it should take, because then it gives you much better results. And again, if you're not satisfied with the results, you can always like do this feedback for ChatGPT, right? You can always come back. Okay, so I don't like it. Maybe let's try a different approach. I also try to do a lot of, let's say, translation. So as mentioned, I always just come back to ChatGPT and ask it to translate. I do all the translations for my app in ChatGPT, but it mostly revolves around summarizing huge amounts of data and just being a support for me. There was one interesting situation lately where I had to do something very quickly, and I just didn't want to do manually. So I had a recording of someone reviewing our app, and I wanted to like make the most out of it. So I just did a transcription. And if you have any audio recordings, you can use Replicate. It's a tool that runs on Whisper AI, which is an open AI tool for analyzing, for doing the transcriptions, and it always works pretty much. I just did a transcription of this video of this review, and I put it into ChatGPT and asked it to just make arrange it the way I needed it and just send it over to someone. There was another quite similar situation where I was submitting our application to one startup contest at an event, and I did it fully with GPT, and we got invited. So this is also a way of filling forms that you don't want to bother with.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, no one likes filling out
Yeah.
forms. So really, I heard that you're using it to expand your expertise in analysis, but also you're using it in other areas such as copywriting, and then obviously transcriptions and translations.
Yeah, because ChatGPT can be a great tool to go through huge amounts of data and try to figure it out things that would take a lot of time for you to figure it out yourself, and also to look across all these huge amounts of data for specific insights or patterns. But I always treat it as something that is a additional help for me, and I'm really I try to be very careful with not relying only on that. There was a very cool expression from a Boston Consulting Group and Harvard study where they gave people access to AI in Boston Consulting Group and just try to observe what was happening. And for some of these people, that's like for some of these consultants that saw that every time ChatGPT is doing great, they just stopped checking it and just copy pasting. So the researchers called it falling asleep behind the wheel, like because you stop caring about what's happening. You just know it's fine, so you just copy paste, and then you may be really surprised because AI models may work in 99 situations out of 100, but then there's one situation where it doesn't work.
Yeah, I think, and it's also like if you do, like you say, fall asleep at the wheel and you just blindly accept what it gives you, it is the fastest way to get to average content as well.
Yes,
Like,
yes, unfortunately, yes. And we always need to take in consideration how people want to work, and they would almost always prefer to work less. So if you give them such a tool that they can just use and forget, there's a huge temptation, and I get it. It's just all about how these tools are employed at workplace and how the companies train their employees to use these AI tools, and in the end, how will be the future of work looking like when we have AI tools that are becoming more and more capable, but then we also have people who use them, and what type of value they can bring together.
Cool. So, I mean, as we've said, like, I think some designers, some creatives maybe ignoring these tools, like, for legitimate concerns around data and things. But do you have any advice for creatives? Do you think there's any skills or knowledge related to AI that are going to serve us in the future? Or do you even think maybe it is legitimate to ignore these tools at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, you can always ignore what's happening, right? Yeah, I mean, you can always try to close your eyes and not think about it. But as we know, reality doesn't work this way. So probably the best advice anybody can take is just to assume that it's going to happen, because then, I mean, you will be prepared. I really don't believe we'll see a reverse in AI adoption, where I don't see AI being banned. I just don't see it. There's just too much money invested in this, and there's a lot of bets made by a lot of companies on that, and a lot of investors. And so, yeah, I think it will just be happening, but slower or faster. And I understand that a lot of people may not be happy about it, may not want to do it. And I think there will be a space for such people, because for each trend there's an anti-trend, right? So if we go more with artificial intelligence and AI content and so on, there will be also a rising need, but I think it may not be as big with the rising need for human content, or human work, human curation, and so on. And there will be a market for it. It's difficult to say how big it will be, because if we think about this from a business perspective, I mean, let's not focus right now on the, let's say, art side. So it's mostly about marketing done for clients and designers working on commercial projects. In the end, money will be an important factor. So most clients will just choose to work with AI content because it's cheaper, and this is how life works. And I think for people who want to be future proofing their career, I think they should be just open to this stuff. And obviously they may hate it, they may not like it, and it's fair. Like, it's not for everyone, and I get it. I think they should stay open to these things changing. So you could be skeptical about Midjourney 1 year ago. I think right now you may change your mind, because it has greatly advanced in capabilities. So, like, things may change, and you may find something more appealing than it was earlier. And another thing is that I wouldn't be really concerned with trying to be the best prompt engineer, because I think AI is not about prompting. AI tools are about creating things that you know what you need, and you know how to guide AI to produce it. And you don't it's not required from you to be a prompt expert, because prompts are obviously something that you use as instructions right now. I think prompts will disappear quite soon. Like, we won't be using prompts, we'll be just using buttons, sliders, or something like this. It will be much easier. The most important thing is, can you use, if there was a mid journey that only operates on sliders and buttons and something like this, on options, if you can create something that is interesting, that has high quality, I think this will be the most important thing. And just, as I mentioned, trying to stay open-minded and trying these tools out, getting some experience, hands-on experience, and just looking forward to what's happening on the market, and not be rejecting everything like from the start.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. Like you said, I can't see AI going away. There's even open source models. Like it's definitely out on the internet. It would be almost impossible to put it
Yeah,
back in the bottle.
yeah, because it's already happening, where AI is becoming intertwined with the solutions we use. So, like Microsoft Copilot is the best example. Like, people don't really understand that this is AI that's working inside their Microsoft Office suits. So, like, for example, if Microsoft Word will start correcting your sentences, Microsoft Excel will create formulas for you, would you be happy to go back to the times where it's not doing that? I don't think so, right? I mean, it's normal, right? Because it's all about convenience.
Yeah, this is the problem with AI. Obviously, there's some ethical concerns, and I think we will see regulation and clarity on that. But the problem is that it is useful, like it is quick, it is efficient, and I've never seen a technology that was useful, quick, and efficient fail. So I think it's here to stay, and
Yeah,
probably people should get
yeah.
involved.
So, like, I mean, there has been a lot of technological advancements, but they have most of the times they have struggled to present themselves as useful and practical, like crypto, metaverse. Like, there has always been great visions and promises, but in the end, it was for not for everyone. AI is for everyone. So, if you see that your grandmother is using AI, and she's leveraging that makes you think that this is something that is for essentially everyone.
Yeah. Well, we've been chatting for an hour, so I won't keep you much longer, but I really appreciate your time and your expertise. It's been a fun conversation. And everyone should go and check out your app, which is adaily.co.
Yes.
I think it's a really useful tool for, designers, creatives, advertisers, marketers to get an inspiration.
Thanks for that, and I also recommend this, and I would be happy to hear your feedback as well if you want to share it.
Awesome, we'll do. Well, thanks and ciao for now.
Yes, thanks for that.
If you like this video, you love our weekly newsletter, sign up at designresources.ai.